Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research. So in today's lesson, I'm going to provide 5 stock ideas that I think look attractive, and I want to go through a few specifics of a trading pattern that I think is really powerful. It's one of the most profitable patterns that I use, and it is a little bit of a longer term scenario that I'm going to point out today. But it can be used on a shorter time frames if you want. But I think for the most part, if we can look for these patterns on a monthly, weekly, you might be surprised at how long and how far they can go. All right, let's go ahead and get going with this. Okay, so I want to go through some of the specifics of this pattern setup in multiple time frames and what I'm looking for as I'm going through. And most of the time I'm starting out and I'm looking at the monthly chart and the weekly chart, but there's a couple things that I'm really zoning in on to try and identify. And sometimes you can really see it on the on a regular weekly, but I do like to take a peek and see if I can really isolate a period where we've had a sideways line. All right. Sideways line means we have a well-defined range where a stock has struggled to get through a specific area. Now, it's not a level like a price point like 25 or 50 or 60. It's typically an area, it's within a couple points of highs and lows. And you can draw a line sideways and say, if we can get through that area, something has changed here. And that's really one of the most important things I wanted to get across. So one of the things I'd point out is I studied Gann. I mentioned W.D. Gann. I studied him for years. And one of the things that he did back in the day, back in the early 1900s, was he had people working for him that were drawing charts. I mean, they didn't have computers back then. So he hired people to fill in monthly charts for him of a huge amount of stocks. He didn't even look at those stocks until they broke out of an established range. Once that happened, it was basically game on. And then he started focusing in on shorter time frames and looking for something, entries and stuff like that. So that's the concept that we want to have in our head. This stock has not been doing anything. It's been a few years. It's been bouncing around. And now all of a sudden we are emerging out of an established range. All right. And we want it to be pretty well established. The other thing we want to take place is we want the relative strength to confirm that move. This breakout move, we want to also see improvement in the relative strength. That means that the stock isn't breaking out because the market is breaking out. It's not being pulled up by the market. If this is turning up, this means this is outperforming. If this is rising, this black line is rising, it means that it is performing better than the S&P during that breakout phase. That's what we're looking for. We want that combination. All right. Now, part number 3 for me is, it's the ability to look for something that has had a sideways line, but also has formed a lot of overlapping price action that creates a low ADX condition. All right. Now, in this case, we did get a move up above 25 here, but we had a pretty significant period here and a pretty significant period here where the ADX was below the 25 line. All right. And, I either want to see low ADX on the monthly chart or I want to see low ADX on the weekly. I prefer it to be both. All right. And I'll show you a few examples of that as I go through and pull up a few others. But we want to have a sideways line. OK, we want to have a breakout of a sideways line. So we have an established range. We break out from that. We get strength that is confirmed by relative strength. We've got a good base. We are turning the 18-month line. That is important. But the other thing that I'm looking for is a low ADX condition that we're breaking out of. And I want to see strength coming out of the ADX at this point. Once we break out, we need to see green DI causing the ADX to break above 25. These are the types of things that I'm on the lookout for constantly to try and identify something that could turn into a pretty a move that can be that can take place over the course of several months. In a lot of cases, it can be 6 months. to a year. There are positions that I'm in right now that actually I've been in, and they're turning into long-term capital gains because I've been in them, and they've been bases that have formed. And these are patterns that are basically that I'm highlighting to my subscribers on Wednesdays. All right, let's look at a couple more examples. So we got this, we get this established range. Can really see it here. You can clearly see it with the zigzag. We break out of that to the upside. Now we have a low ADX condition on the weekly chart. We've got a low ADX condition on the monthly. Now what's missing here, what's bothering me a little bit is we got earnings coming in this one, and this one's already broken out. So you could take the risk and play that ahead of the earnings, but typically I'm looking for the ones that have actually where the breakout is caused by the earnings, or it's already had the earnings and we get follow through to the upside. I prefer that. But this still meets all the qualities I'm looking for. Low ADX condition on both the monthly and the weekly, and now it's starting to show strength. Look at the volume pattern. Look at the relative strength improvement. Look at the breakout of a sideways line. All right, something is going on here. Game is on in this stock. Definitely worth watching. Look at IMAX. So IMAX. You can really see the base breakout on the monthly, and you almost have to go back in time to see this sideways line that it's breaking out of with relative strength improvement. And then we can go and we can see a low ADX condition here. And we had a low ADX condition here for a period, and then we broke out and pulled back. This was actually would have been a really good setup, but again, it was right before earnings. But now we know the game is on here. They've kick something into gear. This is that cause and effect. For anyone who files Wyckoff, this is the cause. We formed a huge cause. All right. The effect would be a move to the upside if we get momentum going. And it looks like we're getting momentum going. So this is one to be on the lookout for entry. Look at a lot of the REITs have shown some strength breaking out of their sideways line. Look at that monthly chart breakout. Low ADX condition, and now we're showing strength. All right, clear sideways line, clear improvement on a relative basis. This is the kind of thing you want to be on the lookout for. Lastly, let's just look at this WH. Again, another sideways line breakout. Look at the improvement on a relative basis, okay? Strong bar breakout on the monthly, low ADX condition, and then we have a low ADX condition, and now look at what's taking place. The ADX is crossing 25 based on the buyers. Good volume pattern. We are looking for probably a little bit of a pullback. It did gap up and showing some strength based on the earnings, but this is a stock where you have to look at it as breaking out of an established range, okay? That was a well-defined range, and we're showing strength to the upside. This is probably the beginning of something rather than the end of something. So be on the lookout for this pattern. I think it can be very helpful. If you're enjoying the content, hit that like button and also subscribe. So my services can be found at rabilstockresearch.com. I'm on this page right now. You can see at the top, I've got my advanced trend and momentum courses. There's 3 different courses now. I've individually priced them, or you can buy them as a bundle, and they are lifetime access now. So I changed that. It's not year to year. Okay. And then we have the individual package. I have about 2 to 3 reports each week, plus a special weekly video for that package that covers a lot of details into what I'm seeing for the week. So if you have an interest, go ahead and take a look. Also, the book is on the book tab. You can go if this is a good place to start if you're new to my methodology. As always, my comments are for educational purposes only. Make sure you do your own due diligence before making any investments. All right, so what I want to do today is, because we've got the election, we've got a significant amount of movement, I want to run through a few different things. I mean, we're getting some really strong price action, obviously, from both the Dow and especially the small cap area. So I just want to look at a few of these indexes and go through them, in decent detail, just so we see what's going on here. So we're waiting for real improvement, and real improvement to me means we've got relative confirmation, meaning we don't just want the Dow going up. We want to see this relative line start to really kick into gear and show that it's outperforming the S&P for any specific index. So I try and compare it against those. Now, obviously, this has moved up, but it's been in a downtrend relative to the S&P. If you look at it from the beginning of 2023, it's been underperforming. So what that means to me is that we've still got enough strength in these large cap growth stocks, which I think are probably outperforming what we're seeing in some of the industrial stocks and other areas that's represented in the Dow Jones. So we want to keep an eye on this. I think if it keeps improving, but nothing wrong with this pattern. Is still pretty strong. It's in pretty good shape, and we're not seeing any real signs of powerful momentum on the weekly, but it's good enough. I'd like to see this ADX cross above 25. It hasn't actually confirmed that yet. But as long as it stays above a rising 18-week, I think we've got to consider this a uptrend. Now, let's look at this. This is, to me, the most important thing that's going on based on the election. Actually, one of the things I wanted to point out, we've got this, it's a really nice little, sometimes you get these heat maps that have so many different symbols on them, you can't really see what's going on. But this one, to me, gives a real quick flavor for where the strength is coming from. We can see small cap value is leading the way here. Small cap and mid cap value, and even small cap growth. You can see the small cap area is really leading, but it's the difference is we're getting a lot of movement out of these small cap value stocks, which I think is a very positive situation for equities. We want to see this improve, and I've been talking about the IWM, but this is very similar pattern. You can see what's going on. When we look at the weekly chart, we're getting this monster green bar developing, and one of the things that I've noticed is we're making lower green DI peaks. All right, this pullback through this whole period here, this consolidation pattern, we've been showing fewer buyers throughout the move. But now with this big green bar kicking in, we're making our first higher high. That to me is a sign of continuation, especially when you see the red DI, the sellers dropping off like that. So wouldn't be surprised to start to see this ADX start to kick in based on what's taking place there. But when we start to look at this bigger picture play, what I think is important is the fact that we're getting the relative improvement to kick in. Now, I want to see it take out this prior peak, and that would sort of complete the 1, 2, 3 reversal that I've been talking about for a while. But this is a really good start in a single week. Now, I will say it's Wednesday. I want to see this look at least this good by the end of the week, meaning if by the end of the week it's come back and it's formed a tail and it closes here and we've got a big tail of sort of resistance forming at this 1500 mark, then that to me would be a pretty big negative. But if we can finish off either a little bit higher or like this, even if we pull back a little bit and then finish the week like this, I would consider that to be incredibly bullish for small cap area. And in tune with that would mean that there should be a broadening effect where a lot more stocks start to participate, a lot more stocks start to break out. Look, this is a big breakout pattern. Huge sideways consolidation that lasted 2 or 3 years, and now it looks like it's trying to emerge out of this with a low ADX condition, right? If we have a low ADX condition, what do we have? We have improving relative strength. We have it's not quite the sideways line that I talked about in the lesson, but similar qualities when you look at the low ADX condition on 2 time frames, and then we need to see enough strength to get this ADX going. Certainly something to be on the lookout for, and if that's the case, we want to start looking for stocks that have a market cap of 10 billion or less to be focused in on. Let's go ahead and take a look at the bonds, because I think if you look at what's going on with the 10-year, one of the things I mentioned this a few weeks back is that we showed some pretty good strength to the upside on the daily time frame. You see this ADX? So when this rallied up here and we got this move to the upside, we knew the possibility was that we were probably forming a range now, and maybe we want to work our way up a little bit higher. We're now back above the 18-month line. I wouldn't consider it the start of a new uptrend, but I do think that it sort of says, look, we're probably not making a big drop either. We could consolidate sideways for a while, and work in terms of a sideways type of consolidation pattern, as opposed to a big drop in a correction to the downside, or what I don't know that this is really ready to break out either. But I do think it's pretty significant that we're seeing some upside follow through, and to me that means that the downside risk of this dropping a lot right now, I just don't think is very high. I could see us coming back and testing this support area, 360, 370, something like that, but I don't think this is going to fall apart. All right, I do want to look at a couple of commodities. Look at the gold chart, because this is the first time we're really seeing any real significant selling. Obviously, we got to see how it finishes the week, right? If we get this to finish this way, it could end up being somewhat important just because we've made such a big run in this index. And I think it's a little bit more glaring when you look at the silver chart trying to hold this breakout. It's starting to kind of give that back. Still, longer term pattern I think is okay, but we're setting up the potential for something maybe a little bit more significant when it comes to a correction for that. The other thing is another metal here. Look at what's going on with copper. On this news, we're getting a pretty good drop off the election news. So to me, that puts these copper stocks on hold for now. Doesn't mean they're going to fall apart or break down. I think a key level to watch for CPER is this 30 mark. All right. I think if we can stay above 30, then the bigger trend is still okay. Let's take a look at the big winner of the day, really, is what's taking place in Bitcoin. Look at this is a pattern I've been talking about now. I don't know, I think I've brought it up 2 of the last 4 weeks. And we were talking about the potential for a zero line reversal with low ADX and breaking the downtrend line and getting our upside follow through. And I really like to look at this. We had a pullback that basically came back to sort of the breakout area, maybe bled back a little bit, but we had good momentum conditions in place and very good signs of lack of selling in place on the decline, not a real deep decline. And then we get things going again. So I think that that is definitely worth noting. Now I think we need maybe a little bit of a dip or a pullback to look for our next entry. All right, so I do want to switch over. Okay, let's look at a couple symbols that came through this week. There weren't as many requests, but so we've got this stock. So we get this big drop to the downside on earnings. It gets hit pretty good. So I think what we want to do, number one, when I get in a situation like this, if you get caught in earnings, like you buy it ahead of earnings and it starts to get hit like this, go back and look at the bigger picture pattern and see where the bigger levels are. All right. We're coming into a level right here, but I think the bigger level is probably closer to something like 750, I think is where I would expect a much stronger support level to come in. But we're at a pretty critical point right here. I mean, if this can turn here, then we could potentially get a rally up towards that 900 mark. I don't know that I'd be looking for any. We're going to need a volume reversal to signal some kind of a more significant bounce up to the 1,000 area. For the most part, I think you got to be careful. It's certainly not a stock I'd be interested in buying. Person who asked about this, I think got caught in this on the earnings, and it's dropped down. So yeah, the possibility we're in the area where we could be getting a potential rally, but I think if it came from here and it didn't have a lot of volume associated with it, I'd probably be looking at something like the 900 mark. All right. If it ends up following through a little bit more, coming down to the next support zone and getting a bigger reversal with bigger volume, then we could get a rally up towards the 1,000 mark after it's completed the decline phase. Okay, let's look at Amazon, because Amazon is one of the better looking big mag stocks still. Look at the way this worked out. So it came down and had a pretty decent decline phase. But if we look at the weekly, pretty significant that this held the zero line during the drop. And the other thing that I like to point out is the fact that, yes, we had sellers show up, but it wasn't strong enough to get the ADX above 25 based on the selling. So when I see that, and then I see the retracement rally back up, we want to look at this as an undercut and rally pattern where we go up and then come back and test the breakdown point and then turn back to the upside. So this is in really good shape. I think this wants to continue to play. I would be more considering this a hold right now. I think the last entry, like I was talking about here, coming up through 190 would probably have been the entry, or maybe potentially buying it after the earnings and on the gap up somewhere in here. Now it's starting to chase. I don't know that I really want to chase it. Maybe something a little bit closer to 200 would be of more interest. Now, I don't really like the pattern in Apple that much now because we've come down on a gap down on earnings. And it looks to me like it's a little tired and that it wants to spend a little bit more time correcting. I don't think it's breaking down from a bigger picture standpoint. It's just a question of whether it's ready to get up and going and break out again. I don't think it is. I don't think this is the type of situation where it's just going to take off like a rocket. I would actually like to see this spend a little bit more time consolidating and let these two lines come together. And maybe a month or two down the road, maybe early next year, something like this could be in a decent position. Now, the same sort of thing is happening with Microsoft. Now, both of these are getting a pretty good rally here. But if you look at the pattern and we go and look on a long-term basis, monthly looks fine. The weekly's in a correction phase. We're back to the zero line. And I want to zero in on this because there's a couple things that are going on. We've got a zero line reversal, but it's also a reverse divergence, and we have no real strength in the seller. So this pattern is a little bit more attractive to me, but I think we need to see some kind of a strength back to the upside to signal that this is ready. And I think I would be looking for that strength on the weekly chart, not on the daily, because we've got this gap to overcome. All right. So essentially, we want to see this getting back above the 440 area. And I think if that happens, this could be a pretty attractive place to be on the lookout for. Certainly not breaking down. It's a question of whether this takes a while. I think the big negative would be if it broke 400. Thanks for watching the show today. If you have any stock requests, you can send them to stocktalk@stockcharts.com, also, or just put them in the comment area below. Also, my YouTube channel is called Invest Like a Pro. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.